All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice exam series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe and share. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. A child frequently hits their sibling during playtime. In response, the parent takes away the child's video game privileges for the rest of the day whenever this behavior occurs. Over time, the child's hitting behavior decreases. Which of the following choices explains the phenomenon the best? All right, so pretty straightforward phenomenon, right? What do we know is happening? Well, it's pretty obvious since the child's hitting behavior has decreased that there's been punishment. And why do we think it's punishment? Well, when the child hits their sibling, the parent takes away video game privileges. So it looks like some sort of negative punishment procedure. Remember, when behavior decreases, it's either going to be extinction or punishment. So then we have to see is something added or taken away or withheld. So it looks like a negative punishment procedure. Now, how might we explain that phenomenon? A, the hitting behavior is weakened because the motivating operation is altered. The consequence of negative reinforcement isn't necessarily altering the motivating operation. What it's doing, though, is establishing potentially the sibling as an SD for punishment. Now, given the consequence, the child learns that in the presence of hitting their sibling or in the presence of their sibling, if they hit, punishment is now available. So it's not necessarily altering the motivating operation, but it is potentially establishing an SD. B, the hitting behavior decreases because it is followed by the presentation of an aversive stimulus. When we present an aversive stimulus, that is more likely positive punishment. In this case, something was removed, so therefore it was negative. C, the sibling becomes a SD for punishment for hitting. This is very likely. The consequences alter the SDs. Consequences create new SDs because the discriminative stimuli signal the availability of reinforcement, or in this case, punishment. So over time, as punishment is delivered in the presence of the sibling, they become that discriminative stimulus for punishment. And then D, the reduction in hitting occurs due to the addition of a reprimand by the parent. Again, we know that wasn't the case. The parent is using negative punishment. So what explains the phenomenon the best? It's going to be C. The sibling becomes a SD for punishment for hitting. You, a behavior analyst, are developing a behavior plan for a 13-year-old whose family is from East Asia. You've never been to Asia and are very unfamiliar with the culture. The family expresses concern that some of your interventions are not aligned with their cultural practices. What is the first thing you should do to remain culturally responsive? All right, in the newest task list, it is a requirement that we remain culturally responsive. And it's a good thing to be aware of because you're going to be working with all types of families from all type of backgrounds. So in this case, the question wants to know, how do you remain culturally responsive in a situation where you have a family from East Asia, you've never been to Asia, and you aren't familiar with the culture? It's not a good excuse to just not take on the client. Unless you really feel you can't serve this client in any way, you should make the effort to attempt or try to better yourself around this particular culture. So the family wants to know why your interventions are not aligned with their cultural practices. What can you do? A, continue the intervention as is, as long as it is empirical and data-based. Very important that we are empirical and data-based, but we have to involve the stakeholders, and we want to make sure our treatment plans are person-centered, right? We want to make sure they fit into the socially valid lives of our clients. B, make any and all adjustments to family requests to meet their cultural needs. This is the other side of the coin. Just because we want to get the family involved and be person-centered, you're still the expert and you still need to do what's best for the client. And so there is times where you need to push back on suggestions. C, modify your interventions to incorporate their cultural values and practices while remaining effective. This is where our dimension of effectiveness comes into play. You want to incorporate their culture as much as possible without jeopardizing the treatment. It does us no good to be culturally responsive in a way that isn't effective. You've got to find that balance. And then D, refer the family to a professional who is familiar with their culture. That might not be available. And as an analyst, it's your job to attempt or make an effort to better understand the culture that you are working with. You're going to work with a lot of different families, and it's not always going to be an option to just give them to somebody else. So in this case, you should modify your interventions to incorporate their cultural values and practices while remaining effective. Jace used to write on the desk at school when he was bored in class. As part of a differential reinforcement intervention, he was given a piece of scratch paper and told to write on the scratch paper instead. After a while, Jace stopped receiving reinforcement for writing on scratch paper and went back to writing on the desk. What likely occurred to cause this? All right, so let's think about what's happening in the scenario. What do we know so far? We know Jace was taught a new behavior, was doing the behavior, stopped receiving reinforcement, and then went back to the old behavior. Now, the key here is we know differential reinforcement was used, and so extinction is in play. So his behavior of writing on the desk was on extinction. Now, what do we call it when a behavior is put on extinction? We teach a new behavior, but then stop reinforcing that new behavior and the old one comes back. Because the two options here are spontaneous recovery and resurgence, right? We know it's not extinction. Extinction has already taken place. We know it's not an extinction burst because the behavior has already decreased. So it's got to be a situation where the behavior has come back after extinction. So what's the difference between spontaneous recovery and resurgence? Well, with resurgence, this is the situation where we've taught this replacement behavior, and then we've stopped reinforcing the replacement behavior, causing the old behavior to resurge. So that's going to be the key. When you want to differentiate between spontaneous recovery and resurgence, is it a situation where a replacement has been taught and is no longer receiving reinforcement? If that is the case, then you're going to want to go with resurgence. Elaine is assigned a new client he has never met before. He plans to gather all relevant information before beginning his treatment. What is the most appropriate sources of information to review at the very start before going into a formal assessment? Pretty straightforward and obvious question. At the onset of cases, we want to review relevant information. And what might relevant information include? Because Elaine, new client, never met, he wants to gather the appropriate information. This could be school records, things like IEPs and detentions, expulsions, be medical records, prior ABA treatment records, prior therapy records. All these records from the history of the client is very important. So what is the appropriate source of information before going into this formal assessment? A, direct observations of current behavior. Well, direct observations would be considered a formal assessment. This is a brand new client, never met, and he's just gathering information before even meeting the client. B, interview with the client's siblings. Again, this is the first step, right? Elaine just found out he's getting this client, never met him, he's just looking for information. So what he wants to find is the historical data like medical records and prior treatment records. And then D, reinforcer assessments conducted by previous analysts. Could be, right? Maybe that's included in the prior treatment records, but that's not going to be the most appropriate source, just the reinforcer assessment. If that's been done, that should be in the prior treatment records. So the best answer here is C, historical data, including medical records and prior treatment records. Notice we always read every answer choice, no matter what. As a behavior analyst, which of these core principles are you expected to adhere to at all times? All right, easy ethical question. And this is just kind of a teaching question, right? Getting you in the mindset when you're dealing with that ethics, you want to adhere to these core principles. It's going to lead you down the right path. So what core principles are we expected to? And this is not my word. These are the BACB, the certification board's words. A, treat others with compassion. Yes, we are a human science, right? We have to have compassion for not only our clients, but the people around our clients and understand what they're going through. B, benefit others with your service. Be effective, right? Be socially valid. That's why these dimensions are so important to understand. And then C, behave with integrity. You're representing yourself, you're representing your company, you're representing ABA as a science. You have to behave with integrity. So, as a behavior analyst, what should you adhere to? You want to treat others with compassion, benefit others, and always behave with integrity. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and share. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. We'll see you soon.